Dear brothers and sisters, today's parable about this rich man who was so successful in life, he decided to tear down the barns, tear down all his storehouses, and store everything that he worked for. And then to just live life the easy way. This parable we could easily translate into modern language. Who of us has a barn? Probably not too many of us. Who of us really works the ground and has crops? Not too many of us. But what if we said, this man worked hard all his life and invested all his money in stocks and bonds and bank accounts, real estate, all kinds of investments, and then retired early and said to himself, now I could live the good life. And then he dies. That we would understand, wouldn't we? We would look at this man and think, what was his purpose in life? It really hits home then. Christ, in his teaching this parable today, does not rebuke being organized. He does not rebuke being a hard worker. He does not rebuke this man for thinking ahead. We should all do that. He rebukes this man for living for himself. Plain and simple. Living for himself. This man erroneously thought that because he worked hard and he earned all this, that it all belonged solely to him. He did not realize that his very life even belongs to God, let alone all of the other things of this world. And so he thought to himself that I can live for myself now. That is so opposite of what our very human nature is. We're created in the image and likeness of God. God who is love. God who showed us how to love by dying on the cross and giving of himself for our salvation. Every husband and wife understand very well. To love means to give and sacrifice. That's our very nature. That's who we are. But this man in the parable lived against his very nature. He thought only of himself. And so, when he died, his soul was demanded of him, and he could not give account. He did not accumulate good deeds in his life. This parable is related somehow to the parable of the 10 virgins. In this parable of the 10 virgins, you have these 10 virgins waiting for the bridegroom to come, and they have lamps. And 5 have plenty of oil in their lamps to keep them lit. And other 5, the foolish ones, had just enough, just to get by. And so the bridegroom was delayed. The lamps were going out. And when he did come, the foolish ones didn't have enough oil to keep their lamps lit. And they ran off to get more oil. And at that moment the bridegroom came and went into the bridal chamber with the 5 wise virgins to celebrate the marriage. The fathers of the church tell us that this parable about the 5 virgins, about the oil, is basically our life of righteousness. That we are to accumulate for ourselves virtues and good deeds. And this is what lights our lamp in life. Through this, we reflect the light of God, the light of Christ, in all of our actions, in all of our deeds. And we accumulate this so our lamp could always burn. We don't know how long that lamp needs to burn. Whether we live 50 years or even 100 years, that lamp has to continuously burn. Just like the parable with this rich man in this barn. He only had enough resources to keep him alive for so long. And so, Christ says today, don't be rich to yourselves, but be rich to God. Saint Theophan the Recluse says that we become rich in God when we do good deeds. When we think of others, when we strive to live a righteous life, we become rich in God. And in that, we also understand that we are simply stewards of God's blessings on us. We don't own anything. And therefore, we live less for ourselves and more for God and more for others. And therefore, we become rich. We could even say we become more human when we give. Because Christ on the cross gave completely of himself. And we, being created in his image and likeness, become more human when we give and live for others. So let us, brothers and sisters, let's don't despair if we think to ourselves, but I have investments. I have this and I have that. Again, Christ does not rebuke this man for being prepared. He rebukes him for thinking only of himself. So let us flee from this. No matter what kind of investments we have, no matter what kind of riches we may have accumulated, let us not live for ourselves, but live for God and live for others, helping others, supporting others. And in our relationships, our marriages, relationships with our children, with our parents, give sacrificially of ourselves for the sake of the relationships. And that doesn't always mean materially. It means time. It means attention. It means prayers and support, love, to give of ourselves. So that the more we give, the richer we become, the more human we become. And in that we find completeness, fulfillment, wholeness. In that we find life. So let us, brothers and sisters, strive to always remember about thinking of the other, becoming rich in God, not for ourselves.